Okay, I hope everybody's doing all right this afternoon. I have a little short video here that I'd like you to watch that is on tonal and color correction as it relates to our next project. This is kind of a fairly quick project that we're doing where we're using layer masks as well as doing some simple tonal and color correction. The layer masks video is posted in Moodle that you can view when you get a chance. And everything that we're kind of doing along the as we progress through these projects, it's kind of going to build on what we've done before. So make sure that you go back if you're confused about a particular concept or a function that we did in Photoshop that you're not sure about. Go back and review the previous videos, or certainly reach out to me and I'll see what I can do to get you up to speed. But anyway, I've got an image that I want to kind of look at and work on. And as you know, we can kind of get to it from a couple of different ways. We can go to File and Open, or we can use the Open button here in this dialog box that we're looking at. If you're on your desktop and you have an image that's sitting there already, you can just certainly drag and drop onto the dock icon on a Mac here. So let's look at this particular image here, and we can see that one of the things that you'll have to learn to do is learn how to evaluate images and be able to say or to tell what makes a good image good, what makes it a bad image bad, why is this image better than another image. So you'll have to learn to kind of get a trained eye about things to look for. The more work that the photographer can do, the better job that the photographer can do, the easier it is once you get into Photoshop. What you want to avoid is if you're behind the camera saying, hey, I'll fix that in Photoshop, I'll do that later. That just creates more work for you down the road. So if you can get your exposures right and your composition and all those things correct in the camera, you're certainly better off. But let's look at this image right here. And at a glance, it's a little bit flat, meaning there's not any blacks, shadow areas, or any whites in the highlight area. So I'm going to employ something we refer to as adjustment layers. But before I do that, I do want to show you that you can come directly over to image mode or image adjustments and get into any one of these adjustment areas here. We'll look at curves because that's fairly easy. And we can come in here and start manipulating the shadows or the highlights or the midtones, and we can improve the image, and we can make some progress here. But the problem is when I hit OK here after doing that from the image menu adjustments, I've permanently changed the original file. So there's really no way for me to get back to the original. If I were to save this image now, I have changed that original file to where I can't go back and fix that. So that is the main advantage of using adjustment layers. So I'm just going to kind of undo. Yeah, I can undo. I can revert back through here if I had several changes past what I'm doing. Of course, it would be hard to get back to that. So that is the beauty of adjustment layers, and that's what I want you to do as you do any kind of tonal correction, color correction on the images that you're going to use within this next project. So on the layers panel, we're going to come underneath here, and it says create a new adjustment layer, and I'm going to use levels for just doing a tonal adjustment. And what that does, it stacks a levels control layer, adjustment layer over that original layer, and we get these properties that come up that look very similar to what I just showed you. And you've got a shadow slider, and you've got a midtone slider, and you've got a highlight slider. This little mountain range looking thing is what we refer to as a histogram, and that shows you where the image data stacks up across the dynamic range, or the possible dynamic range of whites to blacks. By having no data here in this area, it shows me that I don't have anything black, excuse me, in the shadow area. So I can simply drag my shadow slider over to the right. You don't have to come all the way over here because then that's too dark. So again, this is subjective in terms of, it's up to the user to decide what's good. So you kind of have to use your judgment. And this is the midtone, so be careful. That's what creates that flat look. Again, there's no contrast. So I want some nice contrast, and I'm going to pull this in too. So with levels, you have 3 points of adjustment. You've got highlight, shadow, and midtone. And it's fairly easy to make improvements to images here. So to me, that looks pretty good. And of course, we haven't even talked about color calibration and how to set your monitor. If we're really getting into high detail, super accurate color, we would have to be on a color calibrated monitor in controlled room lighting, and it really gets down to the nth degree of trying to make subtle color corrections. But anyhow, back to the adjustment layer. So the beauty of this is that we can do a before and after. I can just turn that adjustment layer off. The other thing is if I save this file as a Photoshop document, I'm just going to throw it onto my desktop for a second. Hit OK, and let's say I close this out and I come back after a week or so and say, hey, I need to work on that image again. If I go to my desktop and find that image, throw it back onto my Photoshop icon, pull it up, looky here, here's my adjustment levels. All that is still there, and I can easily go back in and adjust it. It remembers where I was. So again, there's all kinds of advantages of using adjustment layers. And primarily, it's non-destructive. I can throw it away. I can save these settings, come back as a Photoshop file, if it's a Photoshop file. So when I come over here and save as and change the format to something, let's say like a PNG, which is what I'm asking for on this next project, and hit save and hit OK. And then if I come back in here saying I'm moving a little too fast for my computer here, so it's still trying to save. Let me let it finish. But anyway, it's going to flatten it just like your JPEG did. So all your levels will go away. So let me see. It's still acting like it's doing something. I think it's trying to write back to my OneDrive. That's the issue, I guess. So let me see if I can find that. I'm going to save it back to my desktop. Let's pull this image back up again. Save as, let me go on my desktop and save that as a PNG. Replace, so it sees it. It's up there somewhere. I just couldn't find it right then. Let's see where it went. But anyway, there it is. Take my word for it. It's going to flatten the layers. If I pull that up, it's still saving. There it is. Here's my PNG. You see that on the layers panel. My adjustment layer is gone. Now, that doesn't mean I can't come back in and add another one and keep getting into that. The other type of adjustment layer is what we refer to as curves. And so I'm just going to throw this levels adjustment layer away real quick. I can add curves. And so curves, again, is for tonal correction. The beauty of that, it works the exact same way, except that you've got a you got a shadow, and you got a highlight slider that you can adjust, and that's kind of what I did before. But you can actually plot 16 points of control along this curve, and I don't recommend that because the more little control points on here, it kind of creates more problems. So to get rid of control points, you just drag off, click and drag those points off, and it'll kind of snap back. So by default, it comes in with a flat curve like that. What I would want here, just like if I were to simulate what I did on the previous adjustment layer with levels, is I can come in here and adjust that midtone slider. So I'm moving that, I'm just plotting this point. It gives you a lot more control. Curves does more than levels, but it can be more complicated. You got to be careful with that because you can come in here and ruin an image real fast like that. So if you don't know what you're doing when you decide of curves, I recommend levels, especially for beginners. Okay, so we can save that again as a Photoshop document, as a PNG, whatever I need to do, and then just come back to it to my Photoshop document if I need to adjust it anymore. One last little piece we mentioned real briefly is the sharpen filter. So this image is pretty good. We want to talk about evaluating images. This image is pretty good. If it's going to be destined for a digital press or something like that, sometimes these images need to be sharpened a little bit. And you can just try some of these. And what I like the most is unsharp mask because it gives you control, a little bit more control, and you can kind of get an idea of what it's doing. And let me see if I can tell it to preview. Um, Depending on the resolution, depending on the size of the file and all that, you can really need to be careful in here. So if I hit preview, you can see I've got a little bit more detail in here in his nose. Not much. Again, this image was pretty good to start with as far as sharpness was concerned. But unsharp mask, play with that. That's something I always do before I save any images that I'm going to use somewhere, especially in print documents. Is I'll come and do an unsharp mask real quick to add just a little bit more snap to the edges and to the detail. Okay, so good luck on your next project. And again, remember, we're building on things we've already learned. So setting the image size, all that good stuff, you got to go back and learn how to do that. So pay attention to the specs on this project and make sure we're matching up to what I'm looking for. Okay, thank you, and I hope you have a good rest of the day.